Now, I'm no video game marketing expert. My main advice for video game marketers is place the barrel in your mouth and aim upwards to hit the pituitary gland. Whoops, that'll demonetize us. But I'm pretty sure page 1 of Video Game Marketing for Dummies is to make sure your game is visible and memorable. As such, making your game an Epic Store exclusive is already putting it on the back foot, as that fulfills the first criterion about as well as pushing it off a cruise ship in the middle of the night. But you're really not going to turn things around by calling it... Actually, quick test. Without looking at the video title, what am I reviewing this week? If you hadn't heard of it before, I'd honestly be surprised if your memory held on to the title between clicking the thumbnail and now. Blades of Fire. Even now I had to double check it wasn't Blades of Fury, or Crotch of Burning, or something like that. Anyway, Blades of Fire might sound like a Netflix documentary about roller derbies, but is actually a new game from the devs of Castlevania Lords of Shadow. Another world beater in the forgettable titles showcase. The Castlevania bit does all the work, Lords of Shadow sits on it like a newspaper hat on an important dignitary. Our protagonist is Aaron DeLira, a gruff, hairy dad with one of those names that really looks like it should be an anagram of something. Give me a second. Holy shit, Anal Raider? I was kidding. Aaron is minding his own business in his secluded house in the forest when goons from the local evil empire show up and he has to rescue from them a scholarly teenage boy and the magical MacGuffin he's carrying. At which point Aaron goes, blimey, this call to adventure could only get more generic if he had murdered my parents on the way here. Suppose I'd better journey across the land and murder the evil queen then. I'm a busy protagonist and I haven't got time for a refusal of the call right now. And thus Aaron's adventure begins, accompanied by a scholar boy and an almost straight example of the standard hairy dad dynamic, except instead of becoming surrogate dad to a headstrong young girl, Aaron instead spends the game grooming a beautiful hairless twink. And we're certainly demonetized now if we weren't already. Considering Aaron has both the build and hairdo of a heavy metal roadie who always gets lumped with the job of transporting the guitars made of depleted uranium, he's hauntingly similar to the protagonist of Lords of Shadow, and the whole mythic fantasy setting has much the same vibes as well. But while Lords of Shadow was dismissed by us tosspots as supermarket-owned brand God of War, Blades of Forgotten It Again has come a long way and graduated to being supermarket-owned brand Elden Ring. So we have your usual Souls-like format, explore the semi-open world, find bonfire checkpoints, run into a lot of very burly dudes who will want to play matchmaker between your throat and your lower intestine. But Blades of, for fuck's sake, what was it called again, can't match Elden Ring for grandness of environment design. Its areas feel cramped and confusing to navigate. It's easy to get turned around and confused by paths that all look the same. What doesn't help is that I kept picking up keys without noticing. They were dropped by enemies and automatically picked up, and I'd missed the little info window letting me know because I was too busy teabagging the corpse. And then after circling a maze-like castle 4 times, I'd finally in desperation try one of the locked doors again, and bing, turns out you picked the key up at some point, thicko. What, did you lose it up your catamite's rectum? Should have been more diligent with your anal raiding. So no ticks for level design. The main gimmick of the game is that Aaron has to forge all his own weapons in a system where the durability of the weapon is decided by a little mini-game that's like a cross between mini-golf and pushing the bubbles out of wallpaper, and about half as exciting as that sounds. And you can micromanage the shape and materials for every single part of the weapon to an impressive degree, although pretty much every choice comes down to make do more damage or make quicker and use less stamina. And then we can't move on until we come up with a name for each weapon we make. Look, game, I can see you're trying to get me invested, but calling it Bum Biter isn't going to save this thing from getting chucked in the recycle bin the moment I can craft something with greener numbers. Whenever you die, instead of a bloodstain, you drop your currently equipped weapon and have to run back to get it, which can be very annoying if it was your best weapon, or indeed your only weapon capable of damaging the surrounding enemies, who are frequently immune to at least one damage type, but this is probably also supposed to make us invested. What will you do now? Poor Bum Biter, abandoned alone among monsters like a child losing their dad in the middle of a brony convention, wondering even now if it will ever feel your reassuring presence around its hilt again. Yeah, probably just make a new one, actually. Call me a monster, but we all know that kid wasn't coming out of that brony convention the same. The other gimmick is the combat itself. Instead of the traditional light attack, heavy attack, we can attack in one of 4 directions with the face buttons, which works. It only really matters if enemies are only weak from one direction, like they forgot to wear their armoured bollock guards this morning, or if the terrain is blocking attacks from certain angles. But that's not nothing. Lord knows whenever a finishing blow in Dark Souls was blocked by an inconvenient doorway, I'd scream aloud for my dude to get into their hollow skull that there are a whole 359 different angles we could be approaching this from. My other tick is for the character design. Much as with Lords of Shadow, these devs seem to have a great imagination for memorable characters with unique looks that wouldn't go amiss in something like The Never-Ending Story or Labyrinth, or one of those other classic 90s child traumatizers. But do these ticks add up to the Lyme disease of recommendation? Not really. The writing doesn't sell the story for me. There's no chemistry or conflict between the game's 2 leads, aside from the boy occasionally tokenly reminding Aaron that he's old, and Aaron in turn reminding him that he's a twat with admittedly tight buttocks. See, after giving Aaron the MacGuffin in the intro, the kid's role in the game seems to be mainly just drawing pictures of the monsters we fight, occasionally triumphantly announcing he's finished the current drawing, at which point Aaron goes, "Great job, I'm glad you're around," and I honestly couldn't tell if he was being sarcastic. For all its creativity, the game doesn't put the work in again to make me invested in events. The prologue sets up that Aaron's heading off to kill the evil queen, right? But then 2 minutes later he decides on a whim to kill some other bloke who happens to be on the way. And we're stuck doing that for the next 20 hours or so. Hope the evil queen's got some magazines handy. The game is full of mystifyingly bad story choices, like for one prolonged section forcing us to wait 30 seconds over and over again while a forgetful ghost stands around trying to remember how to proceed before going, oh, turns out the very obviously button-shaped thing on the wall is the button to open the door. Cue contextual button prompt. Blades of is, in summary, a couple of neat ideas perched atop an old, unreliable and singularly unremarkable donkey that keeps stopping every now and again to do a very boring poo.